fascinated by occult crimes. These types of murders take us beyond the limits of reason, and the motives usually remain a mystery. These crimes only seem to make sense to the murderer himself, whether it be Sandy Charles or Jesus Constanzo.
Despite the complexity of the case, defense lawyer Barry Singer knew that the influence of the media, especially movies, had already been cited in other cases involving strange crimes. He intended to draw a parallel between this case and a series of murders that had happened 6 years earlier in Matamoros. Every spring during March break frenzy, hundreds of college students from Houston, San Antonio, and Austin arrive at this city just south of the border. Mark Kilroy was one of them. On March 15, 1989, Mark Kilroy, an American student, mysteriously disappeared after an evening out with his friends in Matamoros. Kilroy's friends were the first to warn border officials of his disappearance. On April 9th, 3 weeks after Kilroy disappeared, Officer Juan Benitez of the Mexican Federal Police in Matamoros arrested 4 members of the Hernandez family, a local organization suspected of drug trafficking. The suspect's ranch was located south of Matamoros. Authorities believed that it was being used to store large quantities of marijuana destined for the United States. The 4 members of the Hernandez family were locked up in the Matamoros prison. While they were being questioned, Officer Benitez had a strange feeling. He got the impression that they were hiding something. There was more going on than just drug trafficking. Could they be somehow linked to the disappearance of the student that the American police were looking for? An hour later, Benitez and his men raided the Hernandez family Rancho Santa Elena. In a small building that was giving off a foul stench, the federal agents found a dreadful sight. A huge cast-iron kettle stained with dried blood, containing pieces of human brain, a grilled turtle, and a goat's head. And all around it were half-burned black candles. When they saw these objects, the police officers began to murmur, "Brujeria," which means witchcraft. In Matamoros, confronted with what the federal agents had found, the prisoners soon confessed to their crimes.
I didn't kill him, but the one who killed him, they hit him with a machete.
At least 10 people, including Mark Kilroy, had been sacrificed in occult ceremonies presided over by their leader Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, nicknamed El Padrino, the Godfather.
A murderer, an assassin, a thief, a rapist. What they all have in common is that they are using a human being for their own aims. Power, force, megalomania, total control. The other, the human being, ceases to be a person. It no longer has the characteristics of a person. It's reduced to being an object whose sole purpose is to satisfy the murderer's compulsions.
As well as his dealings with the Mexican underworld, Constanzo, a 25-year-old Cuban, also had the reputation of being a warlock. His men even said that he had supernatural powers. Obsessed with the film The Believers, Constanzo gradually persuaded his followers to join in his occult beliefs, which were partly based on the movie. According to El Padrino, the murder rituals were supposed to protect him and his buddies from their enemies and the police. They would be invincible.
You must have something that I would call a psychological flaw. Or in other words, something that is lacking on the psychological level. that lets you be influenced by acts of violence on TV or in the movies.
De la violence à la télévision ou au cinéma, et qui
A flaw that could lead an individual to commit or desire to commit a crime or an aggressive act.
Un geste agressif.
Without this predisposition, without this structural flaw on the psychological level, scenes of violence on the television will only frighten us, maybe excite us a little, but nothing more. They just don't trigger any desire in us whatsoever to emulate the perpetrator.
Sandy Charles likely did not know at the time he was doing something wrong and was psychotic, suffering from delusions when the murder took place.
Sandy Charles and Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo both came from communities that traditionally attached tremendous importance to the magical powers of the supernatural world. Culture might well have played a role in their tragic destiny.
I honestly believe that the media, to a great extent, pushed the racial issue or increased the tension over the racial issue at the time when they were up reporting on this. But that was a continuing element that we had to deal with during our investigation, that there was a lot of issues over the fact that Jonathan Timpson was a young Native boy, and that the police, it was suggested that the police weren't taking this serious.
Sandy Charles was sent to the forensic hospital in North Battleford. From there, Sandy Charles escaped. When he escaped, he crossed the river. He crossed the Saskatchewan River. A fairly large manhunt was undertaken to locate Sandy Charles. I was notified immediately after he escaped. When he escaped, I happened to be at my son's piano teacher's house, and my son's piano teacher lived on Sinot Crescent. And when I was told that Sandy Charles had escaped, I looked out the window and I saw 20 to 30 children playing outside. It was frightening. Sandy Charles was captured the very next day and is now incarcerated at the Regional Psychiatric Center in Saskatoon.
Sandy Charles and Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo belong to this special class of secret assassins, killers whose crimes are motivated by a quest for magical powers. For reasons unknown, these horrifying atrocities fascinate the public. Could it be that these crimes reverberate in the depths of our souls? Whether it's someone praying at the foot of a statue of Christ, offering milk to Ganesh, or sacrificing a child in Satan's name, the fundamental question remains the same. Can we really communicate with the gods? Can our actions inspire the gods to answer our prayers?
In the case of the crimes committed by Matamoros, or the murder committed by Sandy Charles, people often accuse the media, television and movies of having played a key role in the atrocities. The way that media make violence seem so commonplace nowadays tends to minimize the horror of the crimes. How many more cases like Sandy Charles will it take before we do something about it?
Since the beginning of time, humankind has sensed the existence of mysterious forces. For some, these forces express manifestations of the divine. On the contrary, for others, these mysterious powers reveal an unknown aspect of the very nature of man, which can only be perceived using our sixth sense.